All right, welcome back, everyone. This is the second explainer in our economics series where we're breaking down the core concepts from the Class 12 NCERT textbook. Today, we're going to get into something really fascinating, the logic behind every single purchase you make. I mean, everyone. This is a super foundational topic, especially for any of you UPSC aspirants out there, the theory of consumer behavior. So let's start with a really simple question, one that economics is always trying to answer. Just imagine you've got 500 rupees in your pocket right now. How are you going to spend it? Are you thinking food, maybe a movie, or a new book? That simple choice is right at the heart of everything we're talking about today. How does a rational person decide what to do when they just can't have it all? That right there is the core question of consumer theory. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to follow a pretty logical path. First up, we'll define what the consumer's problem even is. Then, we'll look at the tools you use to solve it, basically your budget and your preferences. After that, we'll figure out how to find that sweet spot, the best possible choice. And finally, we'll see how this all leads to some really powerful ideas, like the demand curve and, its elasticity. All right, let's dive right in. The very first piece of the puzzle for any consumer, for you, for me, is figuring out what's even possible. And that really boils down to two very, very simple things: how much money you have, your income, and what things cost, the prices of the goods you want to buy. Now, in economics, we have a name for this. The collection of everything you can possibly buy is called the budget set. It sounds technical, but it's super simple. Think about it like this. Say you've got 50 rupees. Your budget set is every single combo of chai and samosas you can afford. Maybe one chai and 4 samosas, or 2 chais and 3 samosas. You get the idea. It's the whole menu of possibilities. Okay, but what's really key here is something called the budget line. Now, this isn't just anything you can afford. Nope. This is the absolute outer edge of your spending power. It represents every combination that uses up your entire income, every last pesa. We'll just call your income M for money. So that equation you see, it's just a formal way of saying what you spend on good 1 plus what you spend on good 2 has to add up exactly to M. But look, knowing what you can buy is only half the story, isn't it? The other half, the much more personal part, is all about what you actually want to buy. This is where we shift gears from the hard limits of your budget to your personal desires. And in economics, we have a word for that: preferences. So how do we map out these desires? Well, economists came up with a really clever tool called an indifference curve. All this curve does is connect all the different combos of, let's stick with our example, chai and samosas that give you the exact same level of happiness. So maybe you'd be just as happy with 3 cups of chai and 1 samosa as you would be with 1 cup of chai and 2 samosas. You're indifferent between them. Neither one is better than the other to you. So here's the crucial takeaway. Economics makes a really simple assumption to get started. More is always better. This is known as monotonic preferences. It's a fancy term, but all it means is that you'll always prefer a combination that has more of at least one thing as long as it doesn't have less of the other. It's common sense, right? And that's exactly why you, as a consumer, always want to be on the highest possible indifference curve you can reach. It's like climbing a hill of happiness. You always want to get to the top. All right, now for the aha moment. This is where everything we've talked about snaps together. We're going to take what's affordable, that's our budget line, and combine it with what you actually want, your indifference curves, to find that one single perfect choice a rational consumer will make. Here's the secret. A rational consumer will always find that one special point on their budget line that just gently touches the highest possible indifference curve they can get to. This single point, where the 2 lines are tangent, that's the sweet spot. We call it the consumer's equilibrium. Think about it. Any other point on your budget line is going to be on a lower indifference curve, which means less happiness. Why would you settle for that? And this just perfectly illustrates the balance that we all try to find every single day, right? At that exact point, you have squeezed out the maximum possible happiness, what economists call utility, from your limited budget. You literally cannot do any better. You've won. Okay, so we figured out the optimal choice. Great, but what happens when things change? What if, say, the price of a samosa suddenly drops? Well, this is where our simple model becomes incredibly powerful. Because by answering that one question, we can actually build one of the most fundamental concepts in all of economics, the demand curve. So here's how it works step by step. First, when the price of a good falls, your budget line actually swings outwards. Why? Because your purchasing power just went up. You can suddenly afford more stuff. Second, this lets you jump to a new, higher indifference curve, which means more happiness. You find a new sweet spot, a new optimal choice. And finally, if you connect all of these optimal points that you choose at different prices, what you get is the demand curve. And what do you notice? It's sloping downwards. That's the famous law of demand right there in front of you. As price falls, the quantity you demand goes up. Okay, now for everyone studying for the UPSC. Listen up, because this next part is absolutely critical. You have to know the difference between a movement along the demand curve and a shift of the demand curve. A movement is simple. It's caused only by a change in the price of the good itself. You're just moving from one point to another on the same curve. But a shift? That's when the whole curve moves, either left or right. And that happens because something else entirely changed. Maybe you got a raise, your taste changed, or the price of a related good went up. So what are these other factors? Well, a big one is the price of related goods. Let's take substitutes, like tea and coffee. If the price of coffee goes way up, what do? You probably buy more tea, right? So the demand curve for tea actually shifts to the right. Then you have complements, things that go together, like cars and petrol. If the price of petrol skyrockets, people might think twice about buying a car. So the demand curve for cars shifts to the left. Makes sense, right? So we know that when a price rises, the quantity demanded usually falls. We've got that. But the next really important question is, by how much? Is it just a tiny little drop, or does demand completely collapse? The answer to that question is measured by something called price elasticity of demand. And trust me, this is a concept that is absolutely crucial for businesses and for government. Now, price elasticity of demand sounds a bit intimidating, but it's not. It's just a number, a precise number that tells us exactly how sensitive you, the consumer, are to a change in price. We calculate it by taking the percentage change in the quantity people demand and dividing it by the percentage change in the price. Simple as that. A big number just means consumers are really, really sensitive to price changes. And we can actually classify goods based on this elasticity number. So on one end, you have things where demand is inelastic. These are the necessities, right? Think salt or critical medicines. Even if the price goes up, you're pretty much going to buy the same amount because, well, you need it. But on the complete other end, you have things where demand is elastic. These are the luxuries, like a fancy car or a foreign vacation. A small price increase there could cause demand to plummet because people will just decide it's not worth it. So why does any of this matter? What's the bottom line? Well, it's all about money, revenue. Elasticity is the key that tells a company what will happen to its total revenue if it changes its price. Here's the rule. For an inelastic good, if you raise the price, your total revenue will actually go up. But for an elastic good, if you raise the price, your total revenue will fall. You can see how this one insight is absolutely vital, not just for businesses setting prices, but also for governments thinking about taxes. All right, so we've covered the whole journey, haven't we? From the consumer's basic problem to their budget, their preferences, and all the way to building the demand curve and understanding its elasticity. Now let's put it all together and apply this powerful theory to a real-world policy question. So I want you to really think about this. If a government wants to raise as much money as possible from taxes, should it put those taxes on goods with inelastic demand, like salt, or should it tax goods with elastic demand, like luxury cars? The answer is sitting right there in the concepts we've just talked about, and figuring it out really shows you the power of understanding consumer behavior. Have a think on that, and we'll explore even more applications in our next explainer.